it became clear to me as time went on that our kids were getting fatter and fatter and having less and less fun and getting less and less fit. And so after thinking about this, I came up with this book. I've got books for, I think we probably have enough books for everybody, so I'm in the process of signing these. So by signing them, I increase the value of them by at least 2 or 3 cents. So, I appreciate that I'm speaking to the converted here, but my theme is going to be that yes, we all know this stuff, we all appreciate this stuff. I give these talks, nobody disagrees with me, except we're just not making progress. We're not making that next step, and we have to. So you know all this. Our kids are obese. They're sick. They have diabetes. They are going to have a shorter lifespan than this generation. Now, again, I know there's diseases of despair, et cetera, and COVID, for gosh sakes, that's adding to this. But the bottom line is that these kids are simply not fit. When I was a kid, and I'll try not to say that too often because everybody rolls their eyes when I do, but when I was a kid and we stole our parents' cigarettes, the concern was we were going to get lung cancer or emphysema or some other horrible disease when we were 50 and 60 and 70 years old. Our children are sick now. They have diabetes now. They have high cholesterol. They have high blood pressure. They have depression now. So it's not a 60s issue. Now here's the crux. You guys, how many people are active PE teachers right now? Boom. You're the first violin of the schools. Our schools are not the same as when I went to school. Things have changed in 50 years. We know why they've changed. We'll touch on that. You are the most important person at the school because you are in charge of the health of these kids. And without health, right, things don't go well. So you need to lead the revolution toward health, and I'm going to explain why. This is a burden. If I ever had to give a graduation speech, which I haven't, but as kids come across the stage, I would tell them all, I'm giving you a weight, and you have a burden now. You have a burden of getting our kids back to a healthy a level of fitness. My degree in sports psychology had me dealing with people coming back from injuries and such. But I tell people that I'm not putting kids on the couch and worrying about their golf swing, as somebody we were talking about earlier, or there's ski carves. But I'm a physical sports psychologist. Everything starts below the neck. If you don't have the physical, you can be the strongest psychological person in the world, but if you don't have the skills, you're not going to be able to achieve what you want to achieve. And so to me, it's a body-mind connection, and that's an important. Your brain is the size of it is for your body. It's not the other way around. You didn't develop this big brain. Your brain's job is to work this incredible machine. That's what your brain is doing. Your brain's job is to help your body do all these incredible things. We can run further than almost any animal. That's part of why we have these big brains. And so it all starts with the body. And again, that's what your expertise is in. I mean, really. So what I was thinking earlier, and I talk in my book about the cigarette companies, and this is Philip Morris doubling down. This is Philip Morris in 1960, when all the data was coming out for lung cancer and emphysema and being attached to cigarettes. This is Philip Morris says, you know what? we're going to supercharge our cigarettes. We're going to put twice as much nicotine. We're going to put 3 times as much tars and other carcinogens into our cigarettes. After they have the data, we're going to double down. Well, guess what? This man and his buddies in Silicon Valley are a big part of why our children are sick, are a big part of why things are not going well. And what does he do? I'm going to double down. I want people to be more disengaged with society. I want people to be more disengaged with Mother Nature. And so I don't use the word evil in there lightly. So let's backtrack a little bit. What's really going on? The problem is that we have not evolved to what Mark Zuckerberg wants us to evolve to, which are, these, heads sitting in a jar somewhere and just, hitting his buttons. We are still hunter-gatherers. We still have this big chunk of primitive brain. We are supposed to walk or run 10 miles, not 10,000 steps, it's 20,000 steps. This is what we do. And we can't get rid of this. And so when you get stuck in traffic this Wednesday, watch your primitive brain on display, because that's what it is. We still have this. We still have these primitive brains. And to ignore them is what's causing a lot of the problems. So we ignore them at our own peril. This is part of the two-headed monster. Ultra-processed foods. When I was a kid, how big was a Coca-Cola? Anybody back in the day, how big was your soda pop? 6.5 ounces. 6.5 ounces. And they made a big deal, the advertisers, when they started coming out with the cans, the 12-ounce cans. But ultra-processed foods were a treat or a unusual concept back then, and now, of course, they're everywhere all the time. You can buy potato chips in any town in New Hampshire. Thanks for coming in, guys. Any town in New Hampshire, any town, anywhere, almost 24 hours a day, you can buy ultra-processed foods. And of course, the screen time is off the charts. We are fighting a battle against not just Mark Zuckerberg, but we're fighting Madison Avenue. We're fighting against, our capitalist society. But we are the adults in the room, and we have to take on this mantle. We have to take on this burden because people are suffering. Our children are suffering for it. So here's the hope, and here's what I talk about in the book. We have a physical identity. You were born with a physical identity. You were born crawling around. You were born eating dirt. You were born looking at everything, touching everything, putting everything in your mouth. This is what you were born to do. So then you go to the airport, you see a 2-year-old. What's a 2-year-old doing? Jumping around, being a huge pain in the neck. But this is what kids do. And that's all we have to do is keep our physical identities intact. But 70-80% of the kids don't have a physical identity. And again, we're very lucky being up here in New Hampshire, these beautiful mountains and stuff. And it's a problem in the cities, but it's a problem even in New Hampshire and even in rural communities. And you see that in your own schools. If we maintain physical identity, the kids will make better choices right down the road in terms of eating, in terms of everything else, and in terms of Mark Zuckerberg and those evils. So the loss of physical identity, at the end of the day, I could really care less about kids growing up and how much computer games they play or how much potato chips or whatever they eat. I wouldn't care, except they're not happy. They're miserable. They have more depression. They have more stress. They have all this anxiety. These kids are not having fun. If they said to me, oh my gosh, Danny, you're a kid, you're sitting there playing with trucks or playing out on the ball field. You should play Call of Duty 6 hours a day. That's really fun. But they're not saying that. They're doing it, but that's because they're addicted. And if nothing else, their academics are suffering because they don't have the fitness to learn. So we have a problem. This is how kids describe Call of Duty and these other games, which, by the way, I have no idea what they're like. But once we get away from nature, things don't go well. So briefly, for the baby boomers especially, over the past 50 years, we wake up every day and we have 200 calories that we haven't burned because we don't do so many things. What's the one thing we do today that we did not do 50 years ago? The one physical activity that we do. Anybody want to guess? The only one I can think of. And I'll give you a hint. You don't do it in New Jersey. Nobody's going to New Jersey? Yes. There it is, right? One thing we do today. But where's the line for Dunkin' Donuts, right? You don't have to get out of the car. There were 6 cars lined up at Dunkin' Donuts when I came by. And and then with COVID, of course, it's even more and more, right? You just got to drive in. It's just absolutely extraordinary. But this is all working against us. So the so-called benefits or technology and stuff is working against us. We don't do any of these things, but most importantly, we don't play outside, and that's the real crux of it. This is your mantra. I want to say sometimes this is the most important slide, but there's a lot of important slides, but this is the most important slide, and this is why you are the first violin. There is no STEM without fitness. There is no STEM without fitness. We want to make geniuses? Good luck. They're too unfit. This is why the geniuses are going to come from other countries. Although I gave a talk to a group of you guys in New Delhi a couple of weeks ago. And oh, by the way, anybody know what's happening in New Delhi it got in the news in the last few days? They had to shut down. They shut down a bunch of coal power plants. They shut down trucking. The air pollution is so bad. So you wake up in New Delhi, you're smoking a pack a day automatically. So the world has changed. We have to maintain physical identity, and the school PE program is the way to do that. However, and you can argue with me about this, PE might be the only profession where if you brought in Dudley Sargent or somebody from 100 years ago, thanks, Don, they would be horrified. They would be horrified especially at the quantity, but they would be horrified by the quality on a lot of levels. Because 100 years ago, what did Dudley Sargent invent? Dudley Sargent invented all these cables and workout machines and exercise machines. But what we're doing so often, and again, I feel bad talking to this group because I'm looking at the other courses and stuff that you guys have to attend over these couple of days, and they're brilliant. And they're all about that exercise and that movement and that fitness and movement skills and such. And that's what we have to get back to. With all due respect, we don't need to learn how to hit a softball in gym class. We don't have time. It pisses people off. It gets people uninterested. We have X number of minutes to work with these kids, and we've got to maximize every second of that. California, say what you will, but always ahead of the curve. Do you think these kids were taking the bus to school and were getting on their computers after they got out of school? No. However, in 1866, they still said, you need to give these kids 2 exercise periods every day. And this is what the studies show. So we are actually introducing legislation in the New Hampshire House this year for 45 minutes for everybody. And actually one of the representatives who was a teacher said, well, why should the elementary schools get less? But this is what this particular study showed, and it was a national panel. But for sure, so we're going to introduce this legislation. It's going to go nowhere. This time we'll introduce it again and again and again. But this is what we should be aspiring to. And what this means is every kid, every day, every year of school. And that's how we're going to maintain physical identity. This is a horror show. And again, I think back to my youth, and my gym teacher was one of these people. he made us sit. If we weren't sitting still long enough, we had to sit still another minute because somebody said something or somebody did something, and we're out of our minds, ready to run around. We don't want to spend time picking teams. We want that kid to walk in through that door of that gym and be moving, or better yet, outside. We won't dwell on this, but this is the third arm of what's happening to our kids and why our kids are unfit, is that a lot of the emphasis is going toward athletics. And in point of fact, in this national study we did for the book, 16% of high school students were playing 3 sports. You need to play 3 sports to have that physical fitness level. 1 sport a year obviously is not doing it. But 86% of the school budget, these are high schools by the way, are going to sports. And so here it is, that athlete, non-athlete, and what we've found, and one of my colleagues found in his research, is that kids start, in 2021, kids start dividing themselves around the age of 7. So if your kid loses their physical identity around the age of 7, they'll start going to that couch potato role. They'll start gravitating toward those other things that, as we know, again, are satisfying, are interesting for the kids. But again, I would maintain at the end of the day, they're not as interesting as Mother Nature if we do it right. Back in the day, if you did not play organized sport, what did you do? You rode your bike, you went out and built forts. You still played outside, even though you weren't playing organized sports. Again, this kind of thing just makes me insane. And it's emphasized in our society. What does WMUR have every Thursday? The local New Hampshire station, they have the Athlete of the Week or something like that. What about the Scholar of the Week? Do they ever have, this kid is crushing it. This kid won the robotics competition, in Kansas City, blah, blah, blah. They don't have that. But we talk about our athletes. They show at the end of the year. And again, I know these kids are doing great and we're proud of them. However, this lady is going to do better in academics, I'm guessing, and is going to make a lot more money because of her academics than she is for her athletic scholarship. The other dirty little secret is these athletic scholarships. Again, we're forgetting about Division I football and basketball for now. These scholarships are not going to kids that are in need. They're going to people that can't afford to send their kids to college. And this is another more research that we did. So the rich keep getting richer. The kids that already have parents that are making sure that they're healthy, making sure they eat well, making sure they get exercise, and then they get the college scholarships on top of that. But this is not what we should be doing. Our job is not to produce athletes for the colleges or for the pros. Our job is to educate children. Our job is to make sure kids graduate healthy and being able to learn. John Kennedy, the federal government has no jurisdiction on this. Jack Kennedy started this back in the day, and you guys still remember the President's Council of Physical Fitness. It actually started with Eisenhower. And what happened with Eisenhower? What did Eisenhower do before he became president? General, right. These are easy questions. I'm not asking the hard ones, yeah. And so Dwight Eisenhower was a general. So Eisenhower was the president in the late 50s. He was president actually when I was born. And he looked around and says, hold it. They've invented television. He was part of the interstate highway. People are in their cars more. Factories are becoming more automated. Eisenhower, in 1956, 57, is getting worried. We're not even 10 years, we're a few years after Korea. We're not even 10 years after World War II. He's worried these guys are getting soft. We've got to do something. So that's why Eisenhower started the President's Council of Physical Fitness. And then Kennedy took off with it. And there were some 4,000 schools. And if you look at the old days of what Kennedy envisioned was not to humiliate people. And I still think I could have gotten that certificate if you had given me another couple of chances. But you teachers wouldn't let me give it another shot. But in point of fact, it was all about fitness. It was all about having fun and getting outside. But it's the states that that are in charge. Has anybody ever read anybody here from Massachusetts? Yeah, okay, and New Hampshire. Anybody ever read the PE statutes in the government? Does anybody have any idea what's written down in Concord in terms of what you should do for PE? It's in my book. Massachusetts and New Hampshire don't talk about time. They don't talk about 45 minutes every day for every kid. They pull the punches, and most states pull punches on that. They all say, yes, we think kids should get more activity. They all say we have an obesity crisis. They all talk about stress levels in kids. They all talk about diabetes. The group, anybody, so nobody in this room was involved in writing them. Whoever wrote them did a great job, except then they wouldn't go to that next level and say, we need it for every kid every day. Illinois was the only state in the nation that said that. Illinois said, this is costing us $14 billion a year, or something, billion with a B, of healthcare costs in the state of Illinois. Illinois was the third fattest state when they wrote this a number of years ago. And guess what? Illinois has since backed up on that. And Illinois no longer has a mandate for every kid every day. But again, as we know, even the state mandates are really suggestions because they don't tie the money. They don't make it necessary to tie money to it. How much? This is a big deal in New Hampshire, but does anybody know what the percentage of money your school gets from the state versus the district? Yeah, that's arithmetic well beyond my understanding. But Hawaii is the only state where there's no districts. All the money comes from the state. But here, as you know, with Claremont, that's been going on literally for 30 years, the lawsuit. And the rich keep getting richer. And this wonderful school right across the road here, you'd be very happy if you were a kid going to Waterville Elementary School. PE is our only hope. We need to rebrand. We need to get Mark Zuckerberg and his cronies to rebrand it. Because again, I was talking to an 87-year-old friend of mine the other day, and we were talking about this subject, which I only talk about 6 hours, 5 days a week at most. And she said she hated PE. She said the teacher actually called her mother because she says, I think Eileen seems to be having her period an awful lot these days. And you get it? Yeah. So that was the big excuse, to not do PE. But she hated PE, but it doesn't have to be that way. I know what you guys learn. I've studied the curriculum. We have the knowledge. You have the knowledge to make PE fun, to make it interesting, to make it addictive for these kids. We have to let you do it. We have to let you use your knowledge. The kids want to do it. We have this need to connect. We just have to allow it. So just to finish up, because I want to really hear from you guys more. Obesity and poor fitness is expensive. It's going to be affecting our military, but I think our military is counting on most of the wars being fought via computers. Where was the chief commander during the war in Iraq? There's so many, I can't keep track. I think during the invasion of Iraq a few years ago, where was the commander of the military physically? What's that?
I thought it was Virginia.
Virginia, yeah, Tampa, Florida, yeah. The commander was not in Iraq. He was not in Kuwait. He was nowhere near there. He was in the United States. Yeah, he was in Tampa. He was stopping at Starbucks on his way to the war. So anyway, this is still potentially a concern. The kids are addicted. The word is addicted. You can use that word. They're addicted to the screen. You know this. They're addicted to bad food. There is no STEM without fitness. We're not going to cure this with a negative. Just say no, right? That was Nancy Reagan with drugs. Yeah, that doesn't work. It's not going to be cured with a negative. But we have the positive. The positive is the physical identity. You were the first violin, you must lead the charge, and we need a revolution. And this is what really this is all about, is this revolution. And if we can start this grassroots movement, getting the PTA involved, getting your friends involved, getting other teachers involved, I appreciate it's a burden. I appreciate I'm asking you to do even more than you're already doing. But this is what we have to do. So in 2002, No Child Left Behind, we got to increase our English and math scores. We're getting crushed. We're 37, right? Croatia, we're just below Croatia. So, we have something to shoot for. So where did the time for English and math come from? 50% of the time, right? 50% of the schools took it from PE. What happened to English and math scores after that? No, they didn't do anything. They went down, if anything. These kids are not fit enough to learn English and math. So the other thing I would tell you in the revolution is that we are not fighting against the art teachers and the music teachers. These people need the time. These kids need art and music. What we want to do is we want to take 10 minutes from science, 10 minutes from math, 10 minutes from social studies. That's our 45 minutes of PE. That's where we can take the time from. Because you know what? If a 50-minute math class is going to be a lot better when these kids are revved up and their brains are ready to learn than a 60-minute math class. They're going to learn a heck of a lot more in those 50 minutes. And the same goes with the other classes. So that's all I have to say. So shoot me down. Thank you. Go.
So you need to have this conversation with all the administration and the SAU people, because we're the little guys. We get told what to do and we're feet on the ground, but they make the decisions and they have no idea what's happening in the classroom.
Oh, trust me, we're working on that, and that's why we've introduced the legislation. But we need the grassroots also. In the book and at the website, survivalofthefit.net, are letters that you can just customize. You download and put your names in, and customize them, and send them to the administrators, to the governor, to whoever. So it's got to go both ways, because as you say, no one of us is powerful enough. But this is a health crisis. I mean, we should be doing something about this. I think I don't know if I had it on the slide. And this is before COVID, but a couple of years ago, everybody made a big deal. All of a sudden, there was measles, and we had less than 1,000 cases of measles in the country. Measles, and yes, a couple of kids got very sick, but the crisis, the health crisis, is right here. It's with us. We walk out the door, it's there, and so we need to use everything. So I think that if you get a copy of this book onto your principal's desk, and by the way, you'll have my, obviously you can buy the book, which I'd appreciate, on your own, or send me an email, send me an address, who you want me to send the book to. I'll send the damn book to them, because we've got to do this, and we've got to start pushing this. And if we all do it together, maybe it's going to make a difference. Yeah. Yes.
The problem I've occurred at our school is we've tried up the fitness, but you up the fitness and you have more kids taking phys ed online. That's the dilemma.
I talk about,
I teach at a big school. We have over 100 kids taking online phys ed. Get out of the fitness part, because they're the kids who need it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a dilemma that we're facing.
The rich keep getting richer. I mean, it's just like the vaccine thing. Well, my kid can't do it because of blah 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 blah. And at the end of the day, we can't. It's not going to be 100%. Right now it's 80-20, 80% are unhealthy. If we can flip that around to make it 20-80, that would be the best problem we could hope for. There's always going to be these kids, but yeah, I talk about that in the book. That's absolute malarkey, this online. I mean, it's just the dumbest thing. There's a commercial for Vermont health insurance now, and you'll be glad to know there's online physical therapy now. And I would just love to see, what that looks like. I mean, it's the dumbest thing. there are certain things we just need to do live and in color. And but I think that if you got, and we've got to get these kids young, but if you got these parents who are already struggling, who are already working 2 jobs and this kind of stuff, those are really the people that we're going to influence. The prep school kids are fine. Holderness in a boys' school does not have an obesity problem. The prep school kids are fine. The private school kids are fine. They have parents and teachers and everything else. They have the wherewithal. But it's really those lower income kids that are really getting screwed with all this. Yeah, yes.
In your legislation, are you put in there to stop if you play a varsity sport, you don't take PE?
Yeah, we're getting rid of, they tried to put that in. We're not putting that in, yeah. And that's another thing.
I'm a coach.
Yeah, exactly. And
My kids in PE.
right. Well, but you know what it's like at a baseball practice. O'Neal, go out to right field. How much exercise am I getting out? So let's face it. Right, and so the varsity kids, and the other thing is that, again, I'm involved with enough high school kids, athletics and such, and these kids are not, just because they're on a team does not mean they're fit. Liz will tell you about that. They don't have the movement patterns and stuff, that they should. So, right, it's a big deal. When you graduate from high school and you go to Europe, and I got to get a workout, and you go into a gym, you should be able to get into that gym and do some squats and do some pull-ups and do some push-ups and some sit-ups and be able to give yourself a workout. That's the knowledge you need, and that is a 6th grade reading level, right? Being able to do a squat, being able to do a step up, being able to do a bench press, that's a 6th grade reading level. My God, we can't graduate kids without diabetes. Is that where we are now? We're lucky if they don't have diabetes, if they don't have high blood pressure, if they're not on some antidepressant, because that's where the bar is now. And we can raise that bar. It's absolutely embarrassing. And if it was a math or a reading issue, they'd make a big deal about it. But they're struggling to learn because of all the things we've talked about. Yeah, yes.
So in your, to your knowledge of the states or the countries that have the higher math and science and reading scores, how many of those countries are implementing PE to this 45-minute-a-day standard?
Yeah, so the standard is the Scandinavian countries, and again, socioeconomically, which is why I gave this talk to India. But as soon as the country gets a little bit of money, China and India and Brazil, their obesity level rises because they get the electronics, they get the bad food. One of my favorite snippets, and I'm just paraphrasing this here. So, where's quinoa from? The flour quinoa. It's from Ecuador. So, and quinoa is this great thing. Has anybody eaten quinoa? Right. Everybody's eating quinoa. Well, it turns out quinoa was a staple in Ecuador. And then, somebody in LA discovered quinoa and they started exporting quinoa from Ecuador. And so it was too expensive then. You wanted to export it rather than eat it in Ecuador. So obesity in Ecuador has gone up because they're not eating quinoa anymore. They're eating corn and wheat and other crappy grains that don't have the protein and such. So, but yeah, it's just it's such a comedy show.
Well, speaking of the nutrition, is any part of your legislation including nutrition or how school lunches? Yeah,
no, not touching that. And for sure, my concept with this is what I really want from you guys is I am, because my cousin's a PE teacher and in high school, and I understand that. I know you're not going to go home and get your 15-year-old students to start running hard for 45 minutes every day of the week. That's just not going to happen in 2021. But what I want is I want your elementary school kids to, the kindergartners I'm guessing are not a big deal. The first graders, PE every day, 45 minutes for them. Then next year it's going to be the first and second graders. And then next year it's first, second, and third. And lo and behold, in 18 years, we're going to graduate a class of healthy kids. And that's my dream, and that's my goal with this whole crusade here, with this whole revolution.